Just to introduce the poet and the poem and the setting of the poem. In the poem, the poet John Milton deals with a very common theme of medieval or Renaissance literature, which is the idea that life on earth is full of constant change, and these changes are mainly negative. Passage of time is such a change, a painful change as it involves physical deterioration and finally death. Milton's poem is a response to such gradual but certain decay. Milton writes in an era which was dominated by Christian thinking, which believed that humans can escape the ravages of time by attaining an eternal life in heaven that is full of joy. In a simplified manner, life on earth is full of suffering, but life in heaven is full of never ending joy. Read the poem along with me. Fly, envious time, till thou run out thy race. Call on the lazy laden stepping hours, whose speed is but the heavy plumed space. And glut thyself with what thy womb devours, which is no more than what is false and vain, and merely mortal dross. So little is our loss, so little is thy gain. For when as each thing bad thou hast intoned, and last of all thy greedy self consume, then long eternity shall greet our bliss with an individual kiss, and joy shall overtake us as a flood, when everything that is sincerely good and perfectly divine, with truth and peace and love, shall ever shine about the supreme throne of Him. It woos happy making sight alone, when once our heavenly guided soul shall climb, then all this earthly grossness quit, attired with stars we shall forever sit, triumphing over death and chance and thee, O time. The poet begins the poem with a very vigorous verb fly, which asserts the reader's vigor and self confidence. Rather than being afraid, he attacks and mocks time. So we see the poet John Milton at the very beginning, he attacks time and he's commanding time to fly off. Envious time, this means time is hateful, malignant. So with time we decay. Time deteriorates everything and finally brings an end. Envious time could also be interpreted as time being jealous of human beings for their eternal existence. So, envious time can have two different interpretations. Milton has personified time and has used a capital T to emphasize this. He gives human quality to time and also the human quality of death, as time will ultimately die in the poem. Time here is not just a concept but an active being, like a human being, whom one must resist and defeat. The poet is not afraid of time, as the very first line makes it clear that time will die, as it will run out of its race. In the second line, the poet feels that time moves very slowly, and so it should call on the hours of life and speed them up. The poet wants time to run its race as quickly as possible. In the third line, the poet emphasizes the slowness of time again by comparing it with the movement of that of plummet, which is there in a clock. And because of the plummet, we see the clock tickling. And the plummet, it slowly descends. And with the descending of the plummet, because of its load, the clock actually tickles. So the poet is trying to say that The time is so slow that it is being compared to the heavy plummets. In line 4, the poet emphasizes that time is like a glutton, someone who can eat a lot. So, time, like a glutton, is eager to consume every living thing and then digest it in its stomach. The poet has shown time as a huge personified glut whose mindless consumes everything. So again we see a personified time like a human being is consuming everything, and whatever time consume is just a mindless consumption. In these lines, poet implies that time is consuming worthless things. And because of it, it's not only crude in eating everything that is available, but is also very stupid because it is consuming things that don't matter much. Time is running after mortal dross, which means time is running after worthless matters. The poet feels that the gains of time is very insignificant, and that's why the loss of human being is very little. Here, the poet is trying to tell us that whatever time is gaining is not a very big loss for human beings. The lines 8, 7, and 8 are short but very powerful as they emphasize a key theme of the poet. Time is insignificant, something not very powerful. Whatever time is gaining is also very insignificant. Humankind will lose things, but these things are not of real value. They are only fake and worthless, which worries of mortal race. So whatever time is gaining, it's only worthless. It doesn't worry the human beings. In these lines, the poet proceeds with his great plan. There will be happiness for mankind once the plan of the poet comes to pass. Now, what is this plan? The poet implies that time, like a glutton, has been consuming everything. So, in the same way, it will consume its greedy self itself. So, time is eating everything, and in a similar fashion, it will consume itself and finish itself. After time has consumed everything, mankind will be welcomed by eternity with an individual kiss. In these lines, the poet considers time a corrupting force without which human beings will return to a state where there is no wants, no worries, no unhappiness. Man will be happy forever and ever. In these lines, the poet comes to the main point of the poem. He feels that once earth has cleared from the influence of time, then it will be flooded with joy. So once time is dead and gone, there will only be happiness around. The human race will be drowned in the flood of joy. The previous depression, negative thoughts, and experiences will be swept away permanently. The new elements ruling the world will be everything that is good and divine. We will have happiness, peace, joy around us. Nothing will be disgraceful. Everywhere there'll be truth, peace, and love. These new elements of truth, peace, and love will enrich God and His supreme throne. Seeing goodness everywhere, man will also be joyous and happy and cherish these moments. So the poet again tells us that time is a very corrupt force, and once we get rid of the fear of time, once time dies, there will be no worries for mankind because we will be living in an eternal bliss where there will only be truth, peace, and love, and we will be surrounding the divine throne, the supreme power of God. In the last four lines of the poem, The poet hopes that once we remove unhappiness, selfishness, we shall have a heaven like world on earth. We will be guided by a heavenly Father, that is God Himself. We will be surrounded by stars. With the help of God, mankind will conquer everything. We will not be afraid of death. There'll be no chance of fear, and there'll be no time to worry about. So, looking at the meaning or the theme that the poet wants to convey, the poet John Milton tells us that once we have removed all the problematic factors of our life, we will come in touch with God. We will come to experience the happiness that God gives to people. And once we get that happiness, we will not be afraid of death, we will not be afraid of chance, and we will not be afraid of time as well. Just to summarize the poem, in this poem, time is an entity which is very troubling for human beings. The poet wishes that the time speeds up, consumes all the negativity in the world, and finally destroy itself. If this happens, human race will be very happy and human race will come in contact with the divine power. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked and understood the explanation. If you have any query, any doubt, please do comment in the comment section. The next poem by John Milton, which is on Shakespeare 1630, will be discussed in the next video. Stay connected.